Hey everyone, today we talk about how happy engineers make better products, right? It completely makes sense. But the best way to make them happy in the first place is really streamlining the engineering experience. Today's guest is a real tech enthusiast and a great open source contributor and really just enjoys making engineers happy in the first place. Hassan Habib. Don't forget to like and subscribe when you're on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Enjoy!
Welcome to Beyond Coding, a dive into the world of successful people in IT. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders. Here's your host, Patrick Akil.
Hey Hassan, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
We've been talking, I think, for at least half an hour about Breath of the Wild and gaming stuff. So we thought, let's kick off the episode. Yeah. I invited you on to talk about streamlining the engineering experience, right? I think as an engineer myself, it's an important thing. Sometimes it's hard to communicate why that is important, but I do think it's important nonetheless. But can you explain to us kind of why that is important in your own words first?
That's right. So here's the thing, being able to create something great is very, very related to your experience while you're creating that thing,
Yeah,
right? If we want to build great things, we need to enjoy every single minute of it, especially when it comes to software engineering, because, software today is super involved into every aspect of our lives, right? From the moment you wake up in the morning all the way until you go to bed, and even while you're asleep, the watch is on your rest, kind of calculating your heartbeats. Software and technology is literally encapsulating a lot of aspects of our lives today. And if we don't, think about being able to systematically produce, high quality, reliable software,
yeah,
a lot of problems could happen. And, to be honest with you, Patrick, a lot of people like will put a lot of time and effort into, oh, let's find the best software pattern or the best software architecture. But I'm looking at this a little bit beyond code, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, you have the great architecture and great pattern, but what if the person that's working with that is not enjoying the process? What if the process itself needs a little bit tweaking,
yeah.
to make it actually attractive to the individuals that want to work on this? I even heard some people say things like, well, this is the nature of our industry. If people don't like it, they may go anywhere else.
Yeah.
But that's also not a good approach, because at least here in the U.S. there's over 2 million open software engineering positions across the nation, and there's a reason for that. There's a need, right? And they need people with certain skill sets, right?
Yeah.
You probably heard a lot about the no code, low code, automating code, and all that kind of stuff. Why do people are talking about that? Because there is huge
There's not enough
scarcity.
people. Yeah.
Exactly. And if we go around and tell people, well, it's hard, deal with it, that's your life, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to end up you're going to end up
Yeah.
with no
No one
engineers,
left.
right?
Exactly.
So my main focus is to basically make building software enjoyable, to make it something you look forward to every day. You and I were just talking about The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
and how excited people, like, this is it. I'm a gamer. I love to play video games, obviously,
Yeah.
as you can see in the background. But I wanted to make engineers think really hard between playing a game that they really like or going and working on this exciting project they're working on. This is my Turing test,
Yeah.
is that you feel just about the same doing either one of these activities. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. But it encompasses so much, right? It encompasses kind of the daily things engineers are doing, from the language they work with, to the
Yeah.
systems they operate on, how easy it is, for example, to deploy a new feature or to develop things, how well tested
Hmm.
they are, or the anxiety you get when you change a bunch of stuff and no tests fail, for example, and you're like, man, I probably made a mistake somewhere. Is it not covered then? Can we release this?
Hmm.
To even the
Hmm.
more high over stuff, right? Working together with other people, fitting within that organization, the kind of autonomy and responsibility you get, even if it's on purpose, right? We give you this
Hmm.
autonomy. You're responsible for this, and even accountable for it, or accidental, right? You touch it, you own it, basically, and that's not
Yep.
really how
Yep.
it should be. It
Yep.
encompasses a lot, and I also think developers or engineers sometimes even have to fight for it, versus kind of the business side of things, I guess. People that are more product oriented usually want the next feature soon as possible, right? But
Yeah.
engineers have more of a long-term mindset. They're like, well, if we do this now in this way, right, a few years down the line, a few months down the line, we're going to feel it. What does
Mm-hmm.
that mean, basically? That's
Mm-hmm.
such a hard thing to communicate, I think. What is some of the advice you would give to kind of communicate and really fight for that engineering experience in that way?
So the number one thing, engineers need to be, aware of each and every step of the way from the moment the product requirements needs to be, gathered all the way down to, the moment that product goes out there and being impacted by the market feedback, right?
Yeah.
There's this mindset that, oh, we don't need to have engineers in this business meeting or
Mm.
requirements meeting, or oh, they already built the project, then now they're not engaged anymore, let me take it from here and take it to the market. This is one of the biggest things that makes engineers detached from the work that they're working on, because okay, I'm excited, I'm working on microservices, I'm using the latest and greatest technologies, but I don't know where that work is headed. I
Yeah.
see some ads, every once in a while a PM will show up and tell us, oh, look, we're doing great, here's a trajectory, right? But am I actually in the know, in the heat of it?
Yeah.
Some of the happiest engineers are the engineers that can go on Reddit at any point in time and see people actually, really recognizing their effort
Yeah.
on the forum or any other social media platform. Or even better, what GitHub did recently is that they started saying, let me collect all the projects that are using a particular library or a particular framework, so people can see real time how much adaptation is happening to their product. So this is number one thing, the know. You have to let engineers, see the entire process. Now, understandably, some engineers don't want to know the end to end. They just want to come into work, write some code, write some tests, and then just go home, eat a sandwich, and watch Netflix or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But making it available
Mm.
is really, really important, because there's a lot of engineers that be like, I can't. So here's the thing: if you are asked to build a feature in a system, right, it has to come from a certain level of conviction that
Yeah.
this feature is actually useful. I can't
Exactly.
just come to you, Patrick, and say make the button blue.
Yeah.
Why?
That's the
Right?
first question.
You know,
Yeah.
why?
Why blue?
And
Yeah.
some and sometimes I've been doing this for 21 years,
Yeah.
all the way up until 1997 or something beyond that. And I've seen people that get really frustrated when you tell them why, right? They'd be like, "What do you mean why? That's what the market wants, but why?"
Yeah. Exactly. I don't get it, basically. Yeah.
So anyway, this is number one thing, but what's more important than this is the engineering experience, and this is Patrick, this is the thing. I've seen all kinds of different patterns. You'd see silos. You'd see, people kind of going into pair programming sessions. You'll see people that are, what I call SAM, the
Mm.
savior architecture model, where you have the one guy on a team of 8 or 10 people that knows everything,
Yeah.
and everybody else is just waiting for that one guy's blessing for that to happen. That's a very dangerous sign. So
It sounds
as I,
like it. Yeah.
yeah, so as I go through the industry, I see all these different patterns. I started collecting that. I gathered all of this in a little book that I called it 20 Years in the Tech Industry, that talks about, all these different patterns. But what's more important here is that what I realized is that engineers, there are three different aspects that if you fulfill for every engineer,
Yeah.
they're gonna be the happiest, they're gonna come to work and they're very engaged. There's high level engagement. Like, I always tell people as an engineering manager, I always tell people, fill people's hearts with
Mm.
happiness and hope, and we'll
Yeah.
come to that in a second. Fill their heads with smarts, and then fill their bellies with food. You know,
Yeah.
I was I was talking to a peer who was also a manager. I said, I've never heard anyone say fill their bellies with food. What's that has to do with software industry? I said everything, everything.
Yeah.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about? If your software engineers are hungry, your code is going to be hungry. It's going to be angry.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so what does that mean? Filling engineers' hearts with hope and happiness. What does that mean? First of all, engineers need to always have something to look forward to.
Mm.
You can't just tell them today is like yesterday and yesterday is like the day before. You
Yeah.
can't do that. You have to hype people up. You have to go and say, listen, guys, this is the next big milestone. If we hit this milestone, we're going to get bigger and we're going to be able to add more features, and speak the language of the engineers that you're working with
Yeah.
and tell them the future has more, right? When you say something like this, people start, like engineers will start saying, I do want to grow. I do want this project. I want to see my work, grow. There is something that makes engineers happy when they see their work being used and recognized and appreciated,
Yeah.
even criticized. That basically means they hit the street, and the street has an option, an opinion to talk about. So there's that guy, hope,
Yeah.
right? But also hope includes, engineers being able to look forward to a brighter future for themselves.
Mm.
So it's not just about the product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just about the project that you're working on. What about me? Where do I stand,
Exactly.
right, in here?
Yeah.
So when you tell engineers, listen, man, today you are building APIs. If we grow in this direction, you'll be able to, to be introduced to UI components, mobile applications. So now the hope is growing and growing because they're seeing real time, plans for their growth,
Yeah.
right?
It's not just
Most
about what they have as output. It's also their part in the process within the organization, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So this is hope, and then you have happiness. What is this happiness part? This is the hardest part because us as engineers, we're a little bit can be a little bit pessimistic,
Hmm.
a
By
cup
nature.
half empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta think about that worst case scenario because
Yeah.
whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So let's,
Exactly.
Murphy's Law. So what is this happiness part? I realized that in any engineering team, if you systematically makes socializing a fundamental aspect of the development process itself,
Yeah.
it has an amazing reflection on the engineers, irregardless of whether they are extroverted or introverted. And I'll explain that in a second.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in some of the teams that I work with, I instituted pair programming as a fundamental practice for
Hmm.
any feature to go out. So, two engineers, we're working remotely. You're sitting on your computer and I'm sitting on mine.
Yeah.
I will write a failing test, and then I will commit the code so you can pull it and make that test pass.
Yeah.
And then you write a failing test and then commit that code back to me so I can make it pass. I call it the ping pong. So you're pairing, but you're pushing, a commit and they pushing a commit back.
Yeah.
So you're serving. It's like playing a video game, against a friend, but in reality, you're actually getting work done.
Yeah.
What does that do? Even for the most introverted engineers that, before going through that experience, they would say, nah, I don't want to talk to people. People just annoy me,
Mm.
right? But what I realized, especially during the pandemic, when socializing is not an option, you need to stay home, and this is your only way of communicating.
Yeah.
When they pair programmed, the connections between this team and their understanding of each other and their collaboration just went through the roof,
Exactly.
right? Because people said, during the pandemic, we're working remotely. Everyone's just sitting in their room, writing code on their own. And then we meet at stand up in the morning for like half an hour, and that's it. For
That's
the
it.
rest of the day, I'm in the dark. I'm in the quiet, just building code.
Yeah.
Instead, I socialized that. I turned it into a social activity where you get to pair with, I'm pairing with Patrick and
Yeah.
I'm joking with him. Maybe we'll take a 5 minute break, watch a funny YouTube video,
Yeah.
while we're working, and then get right back into the game. It created the social, fulfills the social aspect. We sit in front of computers for 8 to 9 hours. Some engineers I've seen, they go beyond 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's really important to kind of diversify the content that is coming through that machine,
Yeah.
when you're building software. So that made people happy. But also more important than this, establishing expectations.
Okay.
Expectations. You can't, if you're an engineering manager and people are coming over to you and they don't know what you're thinking of their performance
Yeah.
on daily basis, you're putting their brain, you're kicking off a background process that's consuming their minds and their resources. Be like, oh, he said that to me the other day. Is he mad at me?
Yeah.
Is the boss mad at me?
What
Manager
does it
mad at me?
mean?
Instead, I said, listen, guys, it doesn't matter what I think about you,
Mm.
right? Your contribution to the project and the impact of your code
Yeah.
is what really determines your performance. So this way I eliminated this whole idea of, am I in good terms with my manager or not? I canceled, my leadership role,
Yeah.
and I said, I'm just an engineer just like you. And
Mhm.
based on how much impact we're contributing to the project, like let's say Patrick created 5 features and
Yeah.
I created 2 features. Patrick should be rewarded more than Hassan because Patrick contributed more to the project. Fair and square, passionate,
Yeah.
for everybody.
I mean, that's
Hmm.
I love first and foremost the pairing example, right? Because as you
Hmm.
said, pairing is has a lot of benefits, right? It increases the quality. The code review process is innate, and it creates that social aspect, right? Even when you're remote, I love the ping pong example. I might even try
Yep.
that out within our team,
Yep.
just to figure out how things are basically and how things can be improved in that way. And as you
Yep.
mentioned, a lot of engineers 8 to 10 hours behind the screen, you're not going to be productive for those 8 to 10 hours, right? I
Yep.
don't know anyone who can do that for the full duration of 10 hours and be as effective throughout the whole time frame, right? Just constant
Yep.
productivity. It fluctuates.
Yep.
It's high, it's low. You go into a flow state, and it's different. If you have that pairing going on and you
Pairing.
have that communication, you're probably going
You
to
get
be
100%.
you're probably going to be as productive, but what's more important, you're going to be more happy, right? Those social
Yep.
dynamics, those conversations, um, are going to bring you closer within the team, within the organization, and within the thing you're doing, right? There's a
Yep.
lot of things you look at within a team, and for me personally, the single most important thing is who am I doing this with, right? Who are my people around me? Who sits left from me and right from me in this ship we're sailing, basically, and obviously
Yep.
also who's the captain, right? And that really
Yep.
boils down to the trust aspect that you mentioned.
Yep.
Is our leader
Yep.
pointing and shouting and being like, we're going to go that way? And if you say why, you get thrown overboard. That's not a ship you want to be in, basically. You want to
Right.
be like, why is
Right.
it that way? And why is it not the other route? Right? Because we all want to understand our kind of place in this organization or this world. It needs to make sense. We're all smart people. We're all humans in a way. So
Yep.
I think it should be explained. Should be explained in a way we can all understand, and then we can just go ahead and do that full force, right? Um,
Yep. Yep.
to bring it back to kind of the engineering experience, we talked about Zelda Breath of the Wild, and to
Yeah.
me, that's a really great example of something that is just a pure work of passion, right? It's been out for 4 years now. It's 2021 now. That's going to be
Hmm.
5 next year. It has an incredible longevity and replayability. And why? I think because the people that worked on it really just love what they've been doing. Just
Yep. Yep.
completely fell in love with it, wanted to go above and beyond, as you mentioned. That's not
Yep.
something a lot of people do. So it's something a lot of people say, but to truly do that, you need to love what you're doing. And I don't think there was any obstacle in their way of engineering that held them back, right? Otherwise, they couldn't
Absolutely.
have put that out. I don't think
Yeah.
if they asked for something, I don't think it would have been questioned as much, or there would always be
Yeah.
a dialogue. There would always be an outcome. But I don't think every single organization has that. Basically, there's a lot of walls and a lot of squares that people fit into or are put into, which is just a shame, right? We all want to work on
Yeah.
something we're passionate about and create the best thing that we can, because then also we'll be happier because of it.
Absolutely. And I honestly, I think that whatever we're creating, it's just a reflection of who we are. So if
Mm,
there's a team of engineers working on a project, right? The project or the product that is and comes as an outcome of this engineering process is just a reflection of the communication, healthiness or
yeah,
status between that team. If the team is not communicating with each other, you're going to end up with a lot of dead end features that, are incomplete, or we didn't sync up with that team. Why didn't you sync up with that team? Well, we don't really talk to them much.
yeah,
We just assumed that they followed the Swagger content. Communication, 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 not just because it makes better engineering teams, but because we as human beings, we're social beings and we like to communicate, and more communication is never a bad thing. A lot of
yeah.
people be like, we already got the Swagger contract, right, from
That's
them.
it. Yeah, we don't need
What
anything
else do
more.
you need,
Yeah, exactly.
right? But if you just ping a team member, say, "Hey, man, how are you doing?" and that's it. That's all you care about.
Yeah,
More often than ever, and I promise you, this happens all the time. If you ping someone on Slack or Teams, whatever you're using,
mm,
they'll say, "Oh, by the way, thanks for checking in. I also want to let you know that we're changing that endpoint."
yeah,
Engineers are so easily caught up in their own heads,
Yeah.
right? And they'll be like, oh, let me just change this endpoint, and then later we'll let that team know. But what if you're actually actively doing a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, Patrick, how are you doing? Just checking in today. How's everything? If Patrick says, oh, all good, okay, have a good day. I already won a credit point with Patrick,
Yeah.
saying, okay, I'm actually reaching out to you genuinely as a human being, regardless whether you're my level, below me, or above me, or any of that hierarchical nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm just a human being communicating with a human being, and we are, like you said, we are in a ship,
Yeah.
and we're trying to get from point A to point B together, right? But
Exactly.
but the other thing that you mentioned about Breath of the Wild is that, I was just showing you before the podcast. I got the book right here,
Yeah.
and
Love it.
one of the things that I saw the developers and the architects on the game, they were talking about, we wanted to create as we play,
Yeah.
create as we play, and oh man, this is like you're using something and you're creating worlds upon worlds upon worlds and towns and cities and monsters
Yeah.
as you are playing the game. So your how you feel from an entertainment standpoint, from an enjoyment standpoint,
Yeah.
is your actual true guide into the next engineering decision that you're making about this game. That is amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what makes this game really valuable, because what they did is that they said we want people to be emotionally attached to this game. They actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
So if that's the measure, then engineers have to play the game and put points on every experience they have throughout the game and try to increase that.
Exactly.
So this is why we keep coming back to the game, because it's fun.
Yeah, I would love to see a documentary of how they pulled that off. But it's a
Yeah.
reflection of what you mentioned earlier, in that when you're an engineer, part of a team, you need to understand the full chain of things that you're contributing to, right? If
Yep.
you're the end customer, it makes it so much easier because you can just pick up the game and play and be like, well, this is not as smooth as I would hoped it to be. And then you can fix that, right? I think
Yep.
the game is a great example of that. But in a long chain, for example, on an e-commerce website somewhere, you're building on a feature and you don't even know which people are using it down the line. How can you be that attached? I think we really, as either leaders or within organizations, we need to kind of narrow that down, right? That chain, and really just bring end customer and the people that are working on the features for those end customers, just really bring them
Again,
closer.
same
Have
table.
them
Yep.
have them communicate. They can be
Yep.
like, well, we're really just struggling with this thing from a user perspective, and an engineer can be like, well, that's like a few minutes of my time. I can fix that for you. I didn't even know that was bothering you. And then
Yeah.
it makes sense, right? Because then you can be like, oh, I don't even have to say why. They're already explaining it, right? They're the ones that are using it. So
Yep.
why not, basically? Then you get that one. Why not do this? Because it makes
Yep.
them
Yep.
makes them more effective, makes them more happier. And in turn, you feel like you're contributing, right? You actually make a
Yep.
difference in kind of that grand scheme that you're a part of. I love.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always say, like, engineers are the only ones that can tell you what's possible and what's not.
Yeah.
I always say this, don't play telephone games between the engineers and the customers, right?
Mm.
Just get them both on the same table and have them talk to each other,
Yeah.
and hopefully you can facilitate the conversation. Let me tell you something you might find entertaining, if
Mm.
I can just, hang on to this a little bit longer. Um, so look at the evolution of the tech industry, right? In the very, very beginning, a long, long time ago, engineers needed to, have punch cards, and they needed to wait in line in front of a laboratory so
Yeah.
someone could pick up that punch card for them and run it on a mainframe.
Mm.
And when they run it on a mainframe, you have to come the next day so you can get the results of the program that you just submitted yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's that little play button that people take for granted today. When you click play on Visual Studio or something,
Yeah.
that was a 48-hour process, and you needed to be nice to the person that is holding the mainframe so they can actually, get your stuff done.
Yeah.
So engineers at early age, engineers had an obstacle between them and the access to the machinery, the compiler,
Yeah.
basically. And then personal computers were introduced. The engineers now had direct access to personal computers, and that obstacle were removed. Okay, productivity increased. The next obstacle was engineers being able to have access to the internet, being
Mhm.
able to deploy their stuff and all that. Do you remember a time where there is an entire DevOps engineers, and you couldn't actually deploy your own code,
Yeah.
right? You had to actually be nice to the SQL administrator and tell them,
Yeah. You
right?
need to approve it, basically. Yeah.
I need to approve it. And then cloud computing was introduced. So now engineers have direct access to provision and create their own resources and deploy.
Yeah.
So that's another obstacle that was removed. And then the last obstacle today that's holding engineers from actually fulfilling their full potential is engineers having access to customers,
Yeah.
right? There's always a middle guy in the middle that's going back and forth like this between the engineers.
Yeah.
This is in no way, shape, or form any different than an engineer having access to the mainframe so they can run their code. The easier and the more faster engineers have access to their customers, the turnaround time on these features will be outstanding, beyond imagination. And not to undermine the role of the people that run the business,
Yeah.
but you have to make sure that if you're talking ideas and possibilities,
Yeah.
you have to bring the engineers to the table. You have
Exactly.
to have them see the customers, make the connection.
Yeah. It's all the brains in the room, right? We need all the brain power to come up with the best thing, and the engineers can say what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. The domains,
Yeah,
the domain experts kind of know the market and if it makes sense for the company, yes or no. And the customers actually know if they're going to use it and in the right way or the way that it's intended. If you don't even know that, you're going to build something and users are going to use it in a different way, right?
that's
An
right.
engineer can never predict all the things that can happen with the thing they build,
Permutation.
right? We
Yeah,
talked about kind of speed running in games and glitches, and you're running through walls and all that kind of stuff. If you're an engineer, you're probably like, well, we tried to block that. People figured it out, and we're either going to patch it or we're going to allow it. But you would never
yeah.
imagine that in advance, right?
Yep, there's also a big portion when you're building features, there's a big portion on being able to put yourself in your end user feet. You
Yeah,
want to put yourself in their shoes and be able to imagine. If I don't know who that customer is and I can't visualize who that customer is, how am I supposed to build a feature that will fit? Like, think of us as tailors,
yeah,
like we're tailoring a suit or a dress or whatever, right? If I don't have access to that customer,
exactly.
how am I supposed to build software that will be beneficial to them?
Yeah,
Then it turns out to be a job. Believe it or not, you probably have heard of this. There are places around the world, and that was to my shock. There are places around the world where, engineers being introduced with a problem. So here's your input and here's your output,
yeah,
and here's what needs to happen. And they have no idea where that piece of code fits in the larger scheme of things
yeah,
as a product. So you don't even know where that fits in. You just know
exactly.
I work in this big company,
Yeah,
right? And this is all I know that I need to make the function work.
yeah. And even then, if they
That's,
even do that, it can still be wrong, right? It can be
of
like, well,
course,
well, that's not what we meant. And you're like,
of
well, but
course.
but you said do this, right? You said what I needed to do instead of why I'm needing to do this.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm, mhm,
it's
mhm. And then it also kind of reduces, the engineer. An engineer brain is, we are 0.23% of the population of the planet. Software engineers
yeah,
represent 0.23% of the population of the planet, and yet
yeah,
over half of that population relies on the work that the 0.23% are doing. This is
exactly.
how important we are. We're doing something really important
Yeah,
that looks really hard. So imagine this. If you're telling an engineer, I only want you to solve the problem, I don't need your opinion,
yeah,
you're minimizing the, like, if you're hiring someone
yeah,
that is smart, you want to kind of allow them to fulfill all the potential because that eventually will benefit the product and the company and the team.
yeah,
So when you go and say, nope, I just want you as a problem solver, I don't want anything else from you,
yeah,
that's kind of sad. It'll make the engineer sad, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a great analogy, right? Because you have, let's say, 100% brain capacity, and
mhm,
your motor skills, right? What your hands do, understanding the code and typing the actual code that you need to implement is probably only part of that. I don't know the actual percentage, but there's also a huge part which can actually help with the solution direction, figure out about
mhm,
why and does this make sense from a customer perspective? Would I do it different, or even challenge things, right? Even if it's
mhm,
explained why, you can still be like, is there not a better way? Can't we do it differently? Can't we do
mhm.
a quick win now versus a long term solution? Versus you always have different options, but if you're
Mhm.
not even part of that conversation, you're just gonna have one option and that's it, basically. Even within
And then,
implementing it, you have multiple options. So even around the solution, there's always multiple options. So let's just put that on the table, discuss it, right? Face forward and just go ahead and do that then.
That's right. And then life becomes really boring. Like an engineer will say, well, if I'm just writing code here and I'm writing code anywhere else, why would I stay?
Yeah,
It's pretty much the same thing versus, and we're talking about engineering experience, the diversification of activities for
yeah,
software engineers, right? There's this misunderstanding that for you as a software engineer, you're just supposed to sit here and stare at your screen for
mm,
8 hours every day and only attend a stand-up meeting, maybe a design meeting, maybe a meeting where people just, are angry because something didn't work, and then maybe a demo, right?
yeah,
Instead, what if we made, socializing a fundamental, systematic, intentional aspect of your day-to-day work?
yeah,
Meaning, I am pairing with Patrick today. Let's say, Martine is a customer, so I'm gonna go to Martine and I'm gonna say, hey, my team is sending me today to kind of sit down with you and understand your needs, right? I can't explain to you how happy engineers are every time you tell them, hey, field trip, let's go see the customers that are using our systems,
yeah,
right? Because they start saying, oh, well, this is my stuff. People are actually using my stuff. It brings a little bit of joy and happiness to an engineer.
yeah,
So the diversification, let engineers sometimes, by the way, a lot of engineers probably might understand this, but for the people who don't practice software engineering and they want to understand our world, just because an engineer is not writing code, that doesn't mean they're not working. It means that they're internally thinking about the problem.
yeah,
Have you ever been playing a video game, but in your mind, how are we gonna move the data from point A to point B? Have you ever been trying to solve a problem and you stood up and you just went for a walk, and when you came back, boom, here's a solution?
yeah.
Because internally you're still thinking about the problem. And that's not like software engineering is not an 8 to 5 kind of job. If
No,
you're facing a problem, it's consuming your brain around the clock, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure. And I mean, the best engineers are very aware of that, right? If I'm
yep,
completely
yep,
stuck
yep.
and I'm like, I don't see it, I really do not see it, I don't understand it right now, means I'm done for the day. My brain
Out.
is fried.
Yep,
Let me go for a
yep.
walk, and then the next day I come back at it, and I'm like, man, it's clear as day. It's
Here it is.
this,
Here it
yeah,
is.
yeah, exactly, right. And does that mean I'm not productive? No, I'm still kind of figuring things out, or I'm recharging, right? Even
Yep,
that recharge, that walk of fresh air, switching up the activity as you coined it,
yep,
that's
yep.
really helpful. And it's hard to measure.
Absolutely.
Then how
Yep.
productive are you throughout the day? It's across a 9 to 5 even. I think the
Hmm.
remote work really helps because people that are night
Can.
owls can just
Yep,
really do their
yep,
stuff at night instead of in the morning.
yep,
And it
yep.
depends on the person, right? How they are productive, or what works for them is different from everyone else, I guess, because we're still dealing with people and their preferences and their kind of own way of working in a way as well. Really
That's right.
just bring it back to kind of streamlining the engineering experience.
Yep.
Um, I want to do a scenario in which I have an engineering team, or I'm part of an engineering team, and I have a product owner, and they're just really pushing features, right? And I'm seeing some issues within the things that we're doing. Things can be streamlined, things can be optimized. We don't get enough time for our testing framework, for example, or even our build times can be faster by. I love seeing those Twitter posts by buying the latest MacBook Pro. Exactly. How can I
Yeah.
really just communicate that we need this, right? We need to be more streamlined if we want um, that velocity in the future versus kind of the product people, which are like, no, 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 this feature and right now, please.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is something I've been seeing, almost in every other team I joined, right?
Yeah,
Streamlining, being able the certainty, Patrick,
yeah,
being able to wake up in the morning and you're not worried about, what are you going to be hit with today,
mm,
to solve, and this ambiguity and vagueness,
yeah,
right? Okay, so one of well, yeah, it brings up some weird
yeah.
memories, right?
I
So
get that.
so 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 one of the biggest things I started to realize is that in a lot of different software engineering teams, there's a lack of standardization.
Mm,
The standard, being able to go and say, hey guys, let's agree how we're going to build integration points.
yeah,
Let's agree how we're going to build processing, core business logic, UI components. Most of my effort, a lot of people say, oh, Hassan, you created this and this and this. I feel like my true legacy is actually that standard.
yeah,
The standard, it's on GitHub, it's open source, just go find it. For people watching us, the standard is a flavor. Like you will see a lot on YouTube, people talk about, oh, the memento pattern and the, dependency injection, but they're all teeny tiny things that are not connected to each other.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do, I went and said, I'm going to build a full framework, an entire engineering standard that walks you through the process of building industrial solid software from the moment you're in the ideation process and purposing all the way to production,
Yeah.
right? And then I started going into every team and saying, hey guys, let's bring certainty to how we want to establish a pattern of developing components for our system, because that will help us in the long run be able to hit the ground running and deliver features and not have to have tech debt
Yeah.
and issues in our system, right? The beautiful thing about standardization, especially in the software industry, is that this is what I love about this industry. There is no holy men in the software industry.
Yeah.
Today you could be right, tomorrow your opinion is not worth two nickels,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Which is really important because the only thing that's constant in our industry is, inconsistency. Like things change all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're going to standardize, you're going to have to be having open heart and open mind,
Mm.
for people coming back and saying, let's do this better.
Yeah.
Let's do this better. So, every single engineering team I go into, they say like, oh no, there's a better way. We can actually build integration points, brokers or services or controllers or UI components. And I keep adding that and modifying my standard over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you have to sit down with the business people and say, hey guys, here's the deal. I know you want these features right now,
Yeah.
right? But there are risks that have to be baked into the delivery of the process. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, clean code, clean coder. He's one of the people that invented the agile methodology
Yeah.
among 17 or 18 people. One of the things that he used to say is that you need to bake in the streamlining process in the feature cost itself.
Yeah.
How is that working? Let's say a certain team is building an API endpoint, and their API endpoint is in .NET 5.
Mm.
Okay. And now the business are coming in and they're saying, hey, we want this new API that will allow us to kind of search, through our database, with a fuzzy search.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the teams plan to upgrade to .NET 6 so they can stay up to date and take care of security patches and all that, that should be baked into the feature itself,
Yeah.
the process itself. Be like, well, it's going to cost 10 days, and here is what these 10 days tasks are going to be. Upgrade to .NET 6 is step one,
Yeah.
and then building your actual features is the rest.
Yeah.
So, believe me, the business is not going to go like, no, you can't upgrade to .NET 6.
Mm.
They'll be like, okay, if that's what we need to do now to
Yeah.
get that feature done. The problem with some engineers is that they actually go to the business and they tell them, oh, we're going to rewrite everything and you're not going to get any new features
Yeah.
in 6 months from now. That is that is the worst thing you can say as a software engineer, because the business person is communicating with the person who's writing the checks,
Yeah.
paying money. The person who's paying money is saying, okay, January we have 3 features. I expect in June we're gonna have 20.
Yeah.
So if you go to that person that's paying money and tell them, hey, in June you're gonna have 0 features, but you're gonna be running on .NET 6.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean?
They'll be like, listen, man, I don't want this. They will just tell you that. I don't want this. Instead, what if you went to the business person and said, okay, we can't get to 20, but we can get 5 or 10,
Mm.
and you already baked in that streamlining process.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a nice story you're going to find entertaining. There was a team that I went into, and the team basically, they had a really crappy system, like
Yeah.
really legacy, like the kind of system that you look at and start thinking seriously about quitting your job and being a Walmart greeter,
Oh
right? You
no.
look at it, be like, that's it. That's the end of my career. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm done here, right? And when I talked to the engineers on that team, they said to me, well, there has been so many different attempts
Yeah.
to modernize, right? They said there have been many attempts to modernize, right? And, it just got shut down because there's no funding,
Yeah.
right? So I said to them, okay, what do you guys think about building another system in parallel? So we're rewriting from scratch, but
Yeah.
we're building this new system in parallel to target new scenarios and new customers that the current system doesn't have.
Okay. Interesting.
So system B
Yeah.
is doing the exact same pipelines that business A is doing, but instead it's targeting more features. So this way, business is happy.
Yeah.
Business saying, wait a second, we're going after, category A and B and C, which is the current system can't do,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, you're building the exact same pipelines that system A is doing. So as soon as this feature is done, you can shut down business A. You have to engineer the engineering process, the
Yeah.
communication. If you don't do that, engineers will forever have conflicts with business because they'll be like, oh, these PMs are not real people. Why? They'll be like, well, I'm telling them we need to upgrade to .NET 6
Yeah.
and they're not listening to
They
me,
don't get it.
right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to change the language. Just like I tell people, this is how I explain it to software engineers. I
Mm.
say, okay, if you're on a SQL server, are you gonna write in C sharp or SQL? They say, no, I'm gonna have to write in SQL. I said,
Yeah.
okay. What if you're on Bash? I said, I'm gonna write in Bash. What if
Yeah.
you're on PowerShell? I say to engineers, treat people the exact same way. If you're talking to a PM, you're gonna have to speak money and you have to speak business.
Yeah.
If you're talking to an engineer, you can speak architecture and patterns. If you're talking to a marketer, you're gonna have to blow their minds with the latest and greatest. Your marketer doesn't care if you're using string interpolation with a plus sign or you're interpolating. They don't care
No.
about that.
Yeah.
But do you know what they care about? They care about how amazing and fast that new feature that you're building
Yeah.
and how much market can it gain out of that. You have to speak the language of every certain group of people. And then you end up with, as an engineer, you end up with being an entrepreneurial, innovative engineering, someone who can talk to
Yeah.
everybody, but also can build systems on the background. That's the ultimate level. If you're an entrepreneurial, innovative engineer in my book,
Yeah.
you are unstoppable force. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
You get shit done basically. You align people in the way
Hmm.
you think is the best. That it could be your own thought or a collective thought, but that's how you get it
Yep.
done. I love that
Yep.
you have the contrast, right? Of being like, well, now it's too late. Now we have to upgrade, which means a few weeks of only tech debt, right?
Yep.
Versus
Yep.
the already baking it in along the way, right? It's an
Yep.
incremental process. You can see kind of the output, your external quality being the thing that's customer facing,
Hmm.
and the internal quality, kind of the what's underneath the surface, right? If you only see the tip of the iceberg, there
Hmm.
can be a huge iceberg under the water, and you also need to maintain that, right?
Yep.
Standardizing it is the start, but then it's incremental. You can be like, this can be more efficient, this can be better, this needs to be upgraded. So why push
Yep.
that backwards in terms of, I think, feature fulfillment versus already baking it in, right?
Yep.
Already baking that estimation, be like, well, this is a requirement. Otherwise, we can't really do that. Otherwise, it is going to hurt us in the long term. And if it's
Yep.
incremental, then you don't need to catch up because really
Yep.
upgrading and not doing any feature development, not delivering that value for the customer is a
Hmm.
catch up. That's kind of a reflection of it already having gone wrong in the past, basically. That's truly how it sounds to me.
You know what? You know who I saw do that? Mechanics, people who fix cars,
Yeah,
right? If you go to a mechanic and you tell them, oh, please change the tire, and they discover that like maybe there's a dent in your car,
yeah,
be like, hey, I also fixed this while I'm at it because your car needs to be, I need to change the tire, but I found the bolts, maybe the bolts on your tire is not in good shape, so I changed those as well.
yeah,
They bake it, they do it automatically, and these guys, they don't even need to actually have the conversation. They're just
yeah,
telling you, hey, listen, man, you want me to fix your car? I fixed your car, and
yeah.
that's what it took. But on the topic of tech debt, I had to come up with a new pattern called code rub. Code rub,
Mm,
when you rub glasses, you're cleaning glasses and stuff like that.
yeah,
Code rub is basically the idea that every single person on the team needs to take 15 minutes every day to look at one file on the project, whether they need to change something in it or not.
mm. Interesting.
So this practice every day, imagine you have a team of 8 engineers,
Yeah,
right? Every day in the morning, let's say before stand up, they take 15 minutes and say, let me take a look at a file that I haven't looked at before.
yeah,
And let me see, can I either clean something real quick in that file or, the file is in good shape and I can just mark my task done. You know what I discovered? By the end of any project, you end up with zero tech debt because we're not just going after things that we need to do. We're looking at files that we think are okay,
yeah,
and we discover new changes. This is why I always say your engineering standard is evolving. You need a systematic, daily, intentional, continuous routine that makes you look at the code every single day, whether it has a problem in it or not.
Yeah, and it has a lot of residual benefits as well, in that your mental model of how it actually works gets honed as well, right? If you build
Yeah.
something and we're not pairing, I'm probably not going to
Yep.
see that unless we do kind of a tech demo of how it was built, etc., etc. So the next time I'm going to see that is probably either when you're gone or you're not building the
Yep.
next feature on top of that, and all of a sudden it's
Yep.
me, and I'm like, man, this could have been done differently, or what does this
Yep.
mean, or there's no comment or documentation. How does this work? But if you've
Yep.
seen that in advance, you can ask questions, you can improve upon it, and you get that mental image of how the code base actually works, and if it reflects what it
Nice.
actually needs to do, which is a different thing as well.
So back to the social activity.
Yeah,
If you're looking at a code, a file that you have never written, and you discovered, oh, the variable can be done better, and you create a pull request for that change, now you're striking a conversations about things that are not necessarily too hot of a topic,
yeah,
but it gets you going with the person who wrote that last line of code while they're reviewing it.
yeah,
You know, you end up with zero tech debt. You have nothing to build on top of, which streamlines the engineering experience in a ways, man, I'm telling you this from experience. It makes things so much easier. People are familiarized with the code.
yeah,
You know, every time there's an engineering standard change, they can change that real quick because I already blocked this 15 minutes of my day to sit there and make sure our code lives up to the latest and greatest standards. Some new change in a C sharp language or Python or whatever, I can adapt that real quick. Your team is in a continuous state of not just learning new things, but they're practicing it. You know, they're
yeah,
actively learning and growing with it.
yeah.
That's engineering experience, my friend. That's fun.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try that out. And I
Yep.
really liked how this conversation went, right? Really just the benefits of streamlining that experience. When you can't communicate it, how you speak that language, right? You need to adapt based on even the programming languages. Uh,
Yep.
take that with you and use it versus the people you're talking to, right? The different departments,
Yep.
their own agenda, and really find
Yep.
that win-win, right? A win for you
Yep.
and a win for them. That's the best
Yep.
outcome. Really
Yep. Yep.
reminds me of that one scene in The Office, but that's besides the point. You know the one I'm talking about. I'll share that. I'll share that
Are
after.
you mean the movie? The movie,
No, no,
the
no.
Office Space?
The
Huh.
series with Steve
Oh, the
Carell.
series. Oh,
That's
okay,
my
okay,
favorite bit.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just a win-win, a win-win-win, and
Win, win,
a
win. Yep.
compromise is not ideal, is what he says. But yeah, and really just fighting for it, right? That's how you become happy. That's how you have the joy of what you're doing as engineer. And I think the
Hmm.
company and the product becomes better of it as well. Is there
Yep.
anything we missed or anything you still want to touch upon as kind of a last thing?
From an engineering experience, just one more thing to add on top of that. You know, when you go home, you know, you're talking to your parents. You don't go tell them, my job is to, you know, build, you know, connections to databases and stuff like that. You just
Yeah,
tell them I build software.
yeah,
You're speaking a language that they can understand. What I beg engineers to do is that to actually incorporate that in their day-to-day activity interactions with other partners, you
yeah,
know, in the business that are not necessarily engineer, savvy or software savvy or tech savvy people, you know, and try to incorporate that. If you do that, the last thing, Patrick, that I really incorporate,
yeah,
food. Eat food with
yeah,
your team. You know, I know it sounds weird, and it sounds weird coming from an engineer who thinks like, oh, you know, we just need to build systems.
mm,
But something strange about getting together with your team on a non-necessarily software development activity
yeah,
and just eating food with your team, you know, just having a little laugh and try to detach from the day work for a short 15, 30 minutes.
yeah,
Just, you know, hey guys, you want Chinese? Let's go eat Chinese food.
yeah,
You know, and it's just, you know, it's on me today. Today it's on me. Let's go and eat together and see how the day goes.
yeah.
You
That's
feel like you're living. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
You're really speaking my language. I love food, and I think
Me
the best the best conversations arise at the table. I'm a slow eater, which means the reason for that is because I talk a lot, and it's really
too.
just that communication. It's a different setting, different dynamic. You truly learn about people, and you have a great meal as well.
Yep. And food, for some reason, food tastes better when you're eating with people.
When you're
It could be the
enjoying it,
exact same
yeah,
meal. Yeah. you're just enjoying it and your brain is, being active.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a nerd out there that can tell you why food tastes better with people, but all I know is that it just tastes better. And, doing things with people, and normally, this is what I say to my team. I say it doesn't matter whether we're building software or making cookies.
Yeah.
Let's focus on building relationships.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing, Patrick. Any software out there, I don't care how great that software is, inevitably it will turn into legacy and it will be rewritten.
Yeah.
Do you know what doesn't? The relationships that you developed during the process of building that software.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of invest in that as a first-class citizen as much as we invest in the quality of our code.
Yeah, I fully agree. I love the analogy of the food tastes better based on the experience, right? The setting, the people, the things that you're doing it with, and the developer experience is just as important, right? The thing that you're actually building becomes better because of the experience around it. I think that really just fully ties it together at the end there.
Yeah.
I love this conversation, Hassan. I want to really thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Ending off on food, the best.
Yes. I should have ordered a pizza, just being delivered all the way over there in Holland, and I got my own pizza here. It would raise some eyebrows eating pizza after midnight, but
Yeah.
hey, you only live once. YOLO. Let's just
Yeah,
do that.
for sure. We would have the same eyebrows here in the morning at 8, but yeah,
That's right.
that
That's
would be
right.
that.
That's right. That's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's end it off there then. Hassan Habib, check
All
him out
right.
on Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. We'll put some links in the description. And again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. You
Yeah.
have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Hassan Habib, everyone.
Beyond coding. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders.